Greetings, travelers. It's me, Wingover Gimble, famous gnome Ballad. I'm here to bring you another bit of lore from the lands of Loch Realta. I'm here to tell you about the Great Migration. Pretty much when the gods opened up the door and said, "Come on in, everyone, the water's fine." The rich lands of Loch Realta was a paradise to all, and it awaited those that would later come to call it home. The gods argued for many weeks who they would bring to take care of this world. Some gods of innovation demanded there be constructs from Mechanus, as they would remember what they were there to do and stay on task. Others argued that machines could only think a certain way, which they would surely fall as a result. They needed diversity in their ranks and really out-of-the-box thinking. After much time had passed, it was decided that beings from numerous worlds would be brought to this land. The gods scoured the different planets to see who they would bring, knowing they would need to be hardy, resourceful, and vigilant. The first to arrive were the Dwarves. They were selected from sacred orders that could move past old hatreds and build a strong kingdom that could assist others. The Dwarven pantheons pressed that they needed to be the rock for others, and the Dwarves understood the gravity of the situation. Taking the mountains of the northern tendril, they began constructing great and wondrous cities that glittered from the mountainside like living gems. When the goblins, trolls, orcs, and kobolds arrived, they were cautious of the dwarves as there had been centuries of conflict between their people, but the dwarves were the first to extend an olive branch, offering food, supplies, weapons, and tools to the new settlers in hopes of unification. These gifts were warily accepted, but sparks of hope was born as they all realized this could be the moment they could shed the chains of their past. Next that were brought in were the tieflings and Azamar. They were instructed that they would be the great guardians of the dragons. The gods explained that only 11 dragons would be brought to this land, and they would serve as the protectors and keepers of the tendrils. 5 chromatic dragons and 5 metallic dragons were brought in as eggs, and 1 platinum one was also delivered. The bias was removed from all of these dragons so that they would hatch and not have any of their inherent hatred, and great knowledge was channeled into each of the eggs. Though the blood of the tieflings and Azamar were from different worlds that were in an eternal war, these two people joined together in order to watch over these draconic beings that would help keep their world safe. Their sacred charge brought them a sense of purpose and peace as they claimed the Central Isle, naming it Vol Solis and setting up their sacred orders. The rock trolls arrived shortly after, towering and menacing. And along with them came the halflings and the fancies. Those two brought joy and lightheartedness to this world that would desperately need it in tough times. And though the rock trolls were heavily prone to violence, when they came to this world and interacted with the creatures, an inner peace came about them. They stayed traveling with the small folk along the lands until the 3 parted ways to start their respective kingdoms. Now, the kingdoms were beginning to flourish and trade was starting. The gods sent servants to explain how the Magitech would work and its purpose. These beings were known as the Automata, constructs of numerous shapes and sizes, filled with all the information on how to run the machines of Loch Realta. In every stretch of the land, above and below ground, there were Automata there to assist others. Many other species were brought in as time passed. The elves were brought in for great wisdom of magics of the natural world. The birdfolk of both Plumeria and Teleros were brought in to help guard and stand vigilant against the ever-encroaching threats. And the gnomes were given the sacred task of maintaining spear guard, and some creatures, much like the hive, crept in while the portals were open, hoping for a new chance at life. The diversity in species gave Loch Realta a strength, as many different cultures began to mix and share their ways of life to help one another. The land thrived as villages and cities were cropping up in no time at all. The gods were very pleased with their choices. The last to arrive was the humans. The gods spent so much time trying to find the right humans among the trillions that inhabited the stars that they grew irritated and tired, just choosing the next ones they would find. They found a small struggling nation that stood fast the trials of hardship and war and figured they should do the trick. They brought them in and they took one of the last remaining parts of the northern tendril, bountiful farmlands and mines rich with metals and coal. And since humans rarely tend to stay in one place, it wasn't long before you could find a human in pretty much every settlement. As much as the gods urged peace and unity and the resources were plentiful for all, this isn't to say the lands were devoid of conflict. The gods brought the different species here to hold the line, but there are times when kingdoms, groups, religions, or even just people will fight. Great battles were had and wars were fought, but the current age of Loch Realta, we've attained a level of fragile peace among the nations. The people who were once refugees, travelers, and immigrants now call this land home. Though much of the recorded history of the Great Migration was lost due to time, it is still evident to this day that the teachings of unity remain within the people of Loch Realta. Well, travellers, hope you enjoyed that little bit of tasty history. I've been your host, Wingover Gimble, famous Gnome Ballad. And if you want to hear more about our tales, you can always check us out on the Twitch or the YouTubes. The next of our lore series that we will be coming out with will be talking about the Great War that happened on the Northern Tendril, where the Foundry of Steel decided it wanted a bit more of the resources of both North Harbour and Mons Regnum. Until next time, travellers, I bid you all adieu.